Are you guys listening to this podcast and getting that basketball itch? The season's coming up real quick, and we've got just the cure for your basketball flu. We have the Ohio Valley Hoops Classic, the 5th annual edition, held in November 29th and 30th at Mason Arena in Mason, Ohio. This is the first year that Triple Double Prospects and myself are involved with this event, but Benny Carroll has been doing a great job for 5 years now and getting some of Ohio's best teams, and we also have a few teams from Indianapolis who are going to be attending this year. Top teams include Cincinnati Moeller, Cincinnati Taft, Cincinnati Woodward, Lakota East, Hilliard Bradley, Dayton Thurgood Marshall, Cleveland Lutheran East, and more. Remember, that's the Ohio Valley Hoops Classic, November 29th and 30th at Mason Arena, Mason High School, Mason, Ohio, and visit OhioValleyHoopsClassic.com for more information. Thanks, guys. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Triple Double Podcast. We are coming at you today with a little bit of a nerdy episode. We've got my guy Kurt Stubbs from JJHud, Ohio High School Hoops Around the State podcast, maybe the foremost expert in Ohio high school boys basketball. He's coming on. We're going to do an in-depth preview. We talked about all the top teams in the state, Division I, Division II, Division III, Division IV, broke it down by region, talked about some of the storylines, talked about some of the favorites from Mr. Basketball, some sleepers from Mr. Basketball, as well as some of the other top players around the state. And Kurt was gracious enough to give us an hour of his time on his birthday, so we want to thank him. As always, love having him on the show. And this episode, we're going to throw a lot at you in terms of information, but definitely did some homework here, and I think we've got a really thorough preview of what to expect in Ohio high school basketball this season. So without further ado, thank you for checking us out, and you're listening to the Triple Double Podcast.
The Detroit Pistons select Luke Kennard from Duke University. The Utah Jazz select Darius Baisley from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Triple Double Podcast. We've got Jason Morrow of 270 Hoops. You're stuck with me, Corey Albertson, and our guest today is the birthday boy. We got Kurt Stubbs. Stubbs, what's going on, man?
Oh, man, I couldn't think of any better way to spend my birthday than talking a little hoops with you guys. And, yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any better than this.
What does somebody get a Kurt Stubbs for their birthday? The guy who's got everything. Tough call.
Well, there are a couple of wrestling action figures that I've been looking for, so that's always a good choice. And you know, a nap. I like a nap. So
there you go. Well, no, you're a simple guy, Stubbs. You're a simple guy, but you're wise beyond your years. And we haven't had you on here in a while, but you are certainly one of Ohio's leading experts on boys high school basketball as well as some other sports. And you work with JJHud on their basketball coverage, and you also host the Ohio High School Hoops Around the State podcast. So we're going to do our preview episode of Ohio high school basketball today. And before we get into that, what is your plan for the podcast this winter? Are you bringing it back? Because I certainly enjoyed listening to it last season when you got going.
yeah, absolutely. Plan on still doing some the weekly previews and reviews, and maybe add a little couple wrinkles to it this year. So looking forward to that. Right now is just kind of a busy time. Really enjoyed doing the stuff I did over the summer. I thought I got some pretty good feedback on that, and that was actually more fun for me than anything. It was kind of like a kind of a selfish thing for me to get to talk to some of those like old time guys and just hear about the stories and stuff like that. But yeah, this winter we'll be back.
I love listening to the summer ones with, Coach Kramer, Coach Krasanchik, who else? Flannery, Cups, all the guys, you had on there I thought were great. So definitely enjoyed those, and I'm going to be excited to listen to you do what you do during the winter, which is really break down what's going on. And, as we jump in here, I want to talk about the Ohio high school season. But before that, I want to talk about some storylines. And one of the storylines here is I'm going to give my own selfish plug, which is, we've got the Ohio Valley Hoops Classic Friday and Saturday, November 29th and 30th, right after Thanksgiving. That's going to be at Mason High School in their arena. And what do we got to do to get you there, Stubbs?
I need a couple more emails from Benny. What's the hospitality room looking like this year?
Strong.
Big plates?
See, last year Benny had 3 different types of pizza in one day. There was Domino's, there was La Rosa's, and I think there was a local joint as well. So I think he's expanded beyond pizza. I mean, we're at Mason Arena. Last year we were in Hillsboro, and there's very limited options in terms of restaurants out there. But at Mason Arena, it's going to draw more people. It's going to draw better hospitality room, and we got some really, really good teams. It's a high-level event, I think.
Yeah, I think for the purpose of the event, moving it to Mason is going to be a big boost. Nothing against Hillsboro, but I mean it's kind of off the beaten path. So I think having it at Mason and looking at you guys' lineup, you got some really good teams coming down there.
Yeah, we're happy to have everybody. The majority of the really, really good Cincinnati teams we have, except for Princeton, but we've got Moeller, we've got Lakota East, got Taft, we've got Woodward. Definitely some really good teams. And we got some Columbus area teams. You look at like a London, a Worthington Christian, who we're going to talk about here, Hilliard Bradley, one of the best teams in Ohio in Division I. So, Cleveland, Lutheran East will be there, and then a couple teams from Indianapolis, Dayton, Thurgood Marshall. A lot of strong teams, and we're hoping for a good media turnout, and hoping for a really good turnout from people all over the Cincinnati area.
Yeah, that should be a fun event, a great way to kick off the season. I know there's a lot going on those opening weekends and the first couple weekends of high school basketball, but you're definitely down in that area. That's a must-see event. I mean, you guys, Cincinnati is really resurging right now with young talent, good teams. Because I'm sure you would agree. There for a couple of years stretch there, it was a little lean for Cincinnati.
It was terrible,
but I feel like the you can see the reemerging, and it certainly helps your event out when the teams in the local area like that are good, and you got some star power with players with some star power, so that helps as well.
No, absolutely. That's the goal. And like you said, there's a lot of stuff that opening weekend, All Ohio, Jerry, they're having their opening event. I'm sure that'll be good. Cleveland, I think it's at Cleveland Heights or Euclid. I know there's an event up there they have every year. And then everybody's going to be talking about, it's mid-December, the play-by-play classic start. There's one down here, and then the big one being Nationwide Arena in Columbus, where Bronny James, Morrow, I think, has seen him play before. His team, Sierra Canyon, out of Los Angeles, is coming to Columbus for one game of a really, really fun showcase.
Morrow might be the only Ohio resident, I think I can say that now, that has season tickets to Sierra Canyon, a California-based team. So quite impressive.
No, absolutely. Morrow knows he knows his LA basketball, man. But no, that's going to be a fun event. So beyond the events, before we hop into the Ohio stuff, I want to talk about this, and it's something we talked about on our group thread, which is we're going to talk about who some of the best players are in Ohio, some of the Mr. Basketball favorites, and before we do that, you got 3 kids who would have been among the best seniors and favorites for Mr. Basketball in Ohio this year. They're all out of state. And then you've got another thing going on in Ohio, which is that ISA Academy is really growing. Inspire was hot last year. Not really sure what they've got this year, but you're getting a little bit of a change in kind of the dynamics of high school basketball. And the three kids who are not here this year are Zeb Jackson, who's committed to Michigan, point guard, was at Maumee Valley Country Day in Toledo, is now at Montverde Academy in Florida. You got Zach Loveday, small town southeastern Ohio kid over across the river at Huntington Prep. He's going to Baylor. And then you got Dominic Penn, point guard out of Columbus area, was at Dublin Kaufman and is now at Hamilton Heights in Tennessee and will likely reclass. So, losing those three guys in a senior class, Stubbs, that already might not have had a ton of star power, that's going to change the dynamics of the high school season.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the young guys all you want, but, I mean, your top-notch teams usually have great seniors, and then you combine them with some younger talent. But when you look at the seniors across the board, I mean, it's not a talent-rich class. And when you lose guys like Zeb, who probably could have single-handedly carried his team to the state and Division 4 at Maumee Valley Country Day. They were on the doorstep last year, just ran into a really good team. But you take him away, you take Loveday off of a small, not a small school, but a smaller school in southeast Ohio. That hurts their area for sure. And then Dom Penn is the only one we're like, he was at a bigger school at Kaufman that is used to having success. But, when you look at the three schools that those guys ended up with, I mean, Hamilton Heights, Huntington Prep, and Montverde, I mean, those are three powers. Those aren't just, average, run-of-the-mill national teams. Those are national powers. And, even if some of those guys don't get a ton of minutes, you're going to get to be practicing against elite guys every single day. And, whether I agree with it or not, they're making the decision for themselves. And if they think that's the best decision for them, that's their choice to make that decision. But it certainly does hurt the state of Ohio when it comes to top-end senior talent.
Well, and you talked about, the decision for themselves, and I agree. And when you look at Zeb playing in Division 4 in Ohio, when you look at Loveday playing in a region where there's not a whole lot of population, there's not going to be a lot of guys his size, or there aren't going to be a lot of guys with his skill set where he's really got to play traditional center, which isn't going to be his game at the college level. It makes sense. And then Dom Penn, there's a family situation, his father relocating to Tennessee. So, there's that factor as well. But looking to the team side, to me, I think there's three major storylines here when we're going to talk about the best teams in the state. And I think the three storylines are this. Number one, in Division 1, can anybody stop Moeller from three-peating this year? I know you've got a stance on that. Number two, Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's back in Division 2. Are they going to be able to just walk to the state like they did so many times in the Akron area in Division 2? And number three, Cincinnati Taft has a really loaded team. Are they going now? They're back in Division 3 where they've been Division 2. So the realignment with those two schools are big. And then Moeller as a potential three-time champion, if they can do what they've been doing in Division 1, I think that's what people are going to be talking about around the state.
Yeah, for sure. Moeller has just dump trucked the rest of the state the past 2 years, and they've kind of did it in different ways.
Really 3 years minus one game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about a play here, a foul call there away from being a three-peat with that 2017 one-point loss to Jackson. But, I mean, it's crazy that Carl, you had the big fella inside in 2018 in Hayes, which made it really easy on the defensive end because he was taking care of everything. And then last year you kind of had a little bit of a different dynamic with Deuce and kid's name's eluding me right now. The kid that came in from Bacon. Yeah. So you had a little bit of a different Moeller team last year, but just as dominant, especially when you can bring a kid like Alex Williams off the bench. But, this year, I don't think the Pack, I don't think they're completely stretched themselves from the Pack this year. I really think with the veterans that Eds is bringing back, the fact that those guys have been down there, if they make it down there this year, it'll be 3 times in 4 years for that senior class. And then you throw in the sophomore point guard. And I think Eds, I know they got beat up pretty good last year by them in the semifinals, but I think Eds with the veterans that they have definitely closed the gap. You got to put Moeller as the favorite, but
the question, Stubbs, if I can jump in real quick on Moeller. The question is anybody going to have the depth to hang with them? You look at, like, right now, I think they've got 7 guys, I believe, that have Division I offers on that team. So the depth, the size, and the athleticism, they don't have the experience at guard. They may or may not be, depending on who you believe, one of Carl's not as good shooting teams, but the depth of talent is just insane right now with the size and athleticism. I mean, he's going 6'5" across the board or taller in some spots with guys who already have Division I offers. And of those 7 guys, only one of them's a senior, but a lot of the juniors played last year as sophomores.
Yeah, I think obviously their depth is going to be very, very tough to compete with. Sometimes I try to look at it in a tournament standpoint of, like, let's see if our 5 guys can be great tonight. And, I think Ed's on a experience standpoint does have an advantage with the amount of big minutes that those guys have played. Because some of the Moeller guys, albeit talented, have yet to be on that big stage. So it'll be interesting to see, come tournament time, Carl will have them ready. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody schemes and game plans as well as they do. But I would love to see another Eds Moeller matchup this year. And you got some other teams that you can't sleep on. I think Mentor's going to be really good. I think Lima Senior is going to be really good. And Pick North and Bradley are obviously going to be really good as well. So D1 is not as open and shut case as I think it's been the last 2 years. And I never wavered on that. And I don't think it's an open and shut case this year, though.
We'll talk about Division II with St. Vincent St. Mary, just the dynamic of moving down, and then maybe the Division III with the Cincinnati Taft moving down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody's really, really happy to see St. Vincent St. Mary's back down in Division II. You bump them up to 1, like, as some sort of punishment last year, and all they do is show up in the state finals and, played as well as they could have played, really. And it was a pretty tough game with Moeller. So now they're back down in 2. The only thing is, usually they steamroll through their district for sure. But this year, you got, if I'm correct, I believe that Bookdale will be in their district. So when you got Livingston, who got this team to the state last year, that makes for an interesting district with them and Bookdale. I still give St. Vincent St. Mary's seems to find a way. They find a way. They're tough. Drew's teams are tough, and they are well coached, and they do seem to rise to the occasion. So that'll be interesting. Everybody's kind of hot on this Toledo Rogers team from a talent standpoint. And then down there your way, Woodward is going to be very good. People think Thurgood Marshall could be pretty good. And so, those are some, and Lutheran East now up in Division II. They've gotten to there in 3 and 4. Now they're up in D2. So, I think St. Vincent St. Mary's is your favorite down in D2 for sure. A lot of talent. But Toledo, Rogers, and Brookdoor are a couple of teams to keep an eye on, though, for sure.
Okay. Well, let's do this then. Let's go. We're gonna go through the state real quick. Division 1, 2, and then we'll do the small schools together real quick. Division 1. Just talking about who are the top teams in Ohio, and in doing that, I think the easiest way to do it is to break it down by region. So I'm going to start for Division 1 down by my way. We talked about Moeller. You'd be crazy not to put them number 1 in Division 1 preseason because of the returning guys plus the overall talent. Beyond Moeller, in the southwest part of the state, the 3 teams that jump off the paper to me as having the talent to compete with Moeller in no particular order are Princeton, Lakota East, and they're very, very young and inexperienced, but in terms of talent, Centerville.
Yeah, I mean, you can't disagree in any way there. I mean, Centerville a little bit different than Princeton and Lakota East. Like you said, Centerville is a really, really young team. Brooks got just a ton of young guys down there, especially his son's got that kind of that winning swagger, and I think they're going to be a team to really reckon with in the next couple of years. But yeah, I think Princeton and Lakota East would be probably the biggest threat. Lakota East was, I mean, you saw them a lot more than any of us, but I would say that they were probably the biggest threat to Moeller last year. I mean, would you agree with that?
I think by the end of the year, last year, they were playing like a top 5 team in the state of Ohio.
Yeah.
Now they lose a guy that was a great player. Yeah, he does a great job. They lose a guy who's a great player, but they bring back 2 seniors who were really good last year. Alex Mangold missed a lot of last year, and they were playing as good as they played without him, which is crazy. He'll be back, and Caden Furman's a really good senior. He'll be back. But the thing with Lakota East, when you look at them and Princeton, they're both in the GMC, and Princeton's got a ton of returning talent, almost all seniors. And for Lakota East, can Nate Johnson, who's going to be a junior this year, can he play like the most talented player in that league? And there's a lot of talented players in that league. When you look at Bowen Hardman, when you look at Trey Robinson, that's going to Northern Kentucky, some of the other guys Princeton has, but the most talented natural athlete basketball player in that league, in my opinion, is Nate Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to take the next step this year. As far as great athlete for sure, but you want to see some more point production out of him. He's going to impact the game in a variety of different ways outside of that, but I think for them to reach their potential, he's got to take that next step and not just be the guy that looks fantastic in the warm-up lines. It impacts the game a little bit. He's got to impact the game immensely this year for them to take that next step. But I still think, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I still think there's a significant gap between Moeller and the second tier of teams in the Southwest.
No, I agree. I mean, you'd be crazy to say no. There's not. I mean, just whenever you look at a team that has as much depth as Moeller at the high school level, and these guys would say, especially at the public school level, it's hard to replicate. And Centerville maybe has that type of talent. The only thing with Centerville is, last year they had 10 players on their varsity roster and 9 were seniors. So you bringing back only one guy, and that guy is Mo Njai, and he's got Division I offers. He's a big body that can guard the post, but you're still breaking in so many young guys that you're going to have trouble playing against the juniors and seniors of Moeller and East and Princeton. So looking over at the Central, and Jason, if you want to hop in, feel free. There's a few teams I want to talk about. I think Thomas Worthington's going to be good. Columbus South is going to be good. Walnut Ridge is going to be good. But to me, if I'm talking about the favorites in that division, in Central Division, it's going to be Hilliard-Bradley, Pickerington North, and then you never count out Pickerington Central.
Yeah, I really like this Pickerington North team. And you could see it last year. There's so much buy-in to what they're trying to do, as opposed to the really talented team they had with Hunter and those guys. I don't know how much those guys were bought in as a unit to the program, and I thought that showed with the upset tournament loss to Mount Vernon. But you look at this team last year, and North was on the doorstep. I mean, they were right there. Regional final game against the Olentangy Liberty. They could have won that game. Liberty, I think, experience kind of took over at the end. But you're looking at a lot of guys and most of the key pieces coming back for this Pickerington North team. They're tough. Unlike a lot of the teams in Central Ohio, they have a lot of football guys like Chris Scott and Sawyer and Idris Lawrence, guys like that are contributing off the football team to the basketball team that give them not only basketball talent, but some toughness too. So I would give them the edge right now as the top team in Central Ohio. I know Bradley will be tough with the way they play in Alaco, and then Thomas Worthington gets Tyrese in there, and then they've got a nice trio of guys. Plus they got some other real nice pieces too. But I think, as you mentioned, Pick Central, they're going to be a different team this year. They're going to be long, they're going to be athletic, and they're going to have to get it done on the defensive end this year, which I think that they will. They're going to surprise some people. They obviously don't have that go-to scorer like they did last year with Garcia, but they're going to do it a little bit differently this year, and I think they're really going to surprise some people, and Walnut Ridge is going to be very good as well.
It's tough with South, being Division II last year, being one break of the game away from winning a Division II state championship and moving up to Division I, because we're not at Division II yet. But when we get there, I think if South was in Division II, they would be preseason top 5 in the state and definitely preseason favorite in Central Ohio.
Yeah, I remiss for missing them. They are definitely talent-wise at the guard position, athletically, they are capable of winning a Division I district for sure. And another team we kind of swiped over, I don't know if we even mentioned them, that could make a little noise this year. Columbus St. Charles could be pretty good. They've got some younger guys there. They could be pretty solid this year as well. But yeah, South could definitely win a district. There's no doubt about it.
Well, Mauro, if you want to jump in here for a second, I think Columbus might be the most interesting region in Division I heading into the season, because like Stubbs just said, there's so many teams that can win it, and off talent it's probably Pick North, off experience it's probably Hilliard Bradley, but it could go any way.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that what Kurt said about Pick North is very true, that they have those football guys that bring that added toughness. And I was, that Pick North Olentangy Liberty regional final last year was just a downright war. And I think the experience of playing in that game for Pick North and getting all those guys to come back, I think they are probably the favorites. But I wouldn't count out, especially, as we've seen with Pick Central being sometimes not always the favorite, they've won the region too. So I think Pick North and Pick Central, and I think the trendy pick is going to be Thomas Worthington, because they see that the addition of Tyrese Huey is going to be good, very good for them. But I'm not sure that they have the experience at that level to win a region. But it's a little bit more open than it's been in years past, I would definitely say.
Well, Thomas Worthington, if we're sitting here talking a year from now, they're probably the favorite when Solinger and Hugie are seniors, and they're, maybe as good of a 1-2 punch as there is in the state, but that's a year away. So Northeast Stubbs, Northeast region, you've got another one where there's a couple teams that could get through. You mentioned Mentor. Obviously, you mentioned Cleveland St. Ed. Two other teams on talent. Cleveland Brush has Big John Hughley, maybe one of the primary favorites for Mr. Basketball. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then the other team that jumps off the page is having a chance to be really good is Cleveland Heights. Yeah,
Cleveland Heights is a team that I'm interested in. They've got some I believe that's where Garvin Clark is now. It has been a mystery as to where he's been, but he is with Cleveland Heights, and so is E.J. Farmer, and they had some pieces returning from last year's team as well. So, I'm always a little skeptical when you piece the team together like that. how those guys are going to gel, and as soon as a little bit of adversity hits, what happens? I don't know. So that's unknown at this point for that team. The thing with Brush is Big John is obviously a force, but I don't see them being as good as they were. I thought they were solid at the guard position last year with some seniors, with Dials on leading the way in the backcourt for that team. I think they were probably better at guard last year than they will be this year, or more experienced at guard last year, which in high school basketball, it's so huge, in any level of basketball for that matter. But I really think Mentor, with the way that, multiple guys that can, pass, dribble, shoot, catch, they could pose a problem. But I really, really like this Eds team. I just like their experience, and just studying and following the history of basketball in Ohio. They just have the makeup of teams that make deep runs.
Sure. And like you said, the experience and then the coaching, Mentor, and then St. Ed's as well is going to be extremely well prepared, and maybe doesn't have the top to bottom talent of a school like Cleveland Heights where they just seem to have unlimited athletes, but they'll be right in the mix. And I agree with what you said on Brush. Chet's nephew, Andre Harris, had a tremendous senior year, is now at Wright State, and everybody's talking about how good Big John is, and Big John's a great player, but, they're going to miss Andre Harris a lot. So, last region, absolutely. Last region, Northwest region, Division I, the only team that I see really being a legitimate state title threat is Lima Senior. You mentioned them earlier. They've got one of the better seniors in Ohio, and Josiah Fulcher, and Coach Quincy Simpson's just got a really good team up there.
He sure does. And you're right. Like, usually there's a really, really good team, whether it's St. John's or Whitmer or Central Catholic, St. Francis. I don't see anybody quite on Lima Senior's level. I do think Findlay is going to be pretty good. They have some really good young kids on that Findlay team, but when you look at Lima Senior, Q does a really good job to get the guys to buy in, to be tough. Just they're gonna work hard. They're gonna be in you. And Fulcher is, I believe, the reigning conference player of the year in track. He's going to have a big season, in my opinion. You got Jameer Simpson back. You got Khalil Luster. They've got just a lot of pieces that I think, they could be a real, I don't know if it would be a surprise, but, they're a team that could certainly get to Columbus with the experience, and I think Q does a really good job with them.
They definitely have the buy-in, and they've got the seniors and guys who want to get it done, and it's a school that's going to have a ton of community support behind them. Moving on to Division II now, and I think Division I, those are the top teams. Division II, going back to the Southwest, you mentioned early in this podcast Cincinnati Woodward and Dayton Thurgood Marshall, two very, very talented teams, especially at the guard position. They can kind of run you off the floor. They can score a lot of points. A couple other teams in Southwest Ohio Division II, Cincinnati Aiken. Everybody talks about Taft and Hughes and Woodward, but Aiken just seems to creep up there and win as many games as anybody. Kettering Alter has a really, really good team returning, and one of the better young sophomores that should make some noise this year. And then my guy, Evan Prater, and junior Isaiah Walker are going to keep Wyoming in the mix as they've been for the last several years now.
Yeah, I think you hit most of the top teams down there. I know Trotwood had a key injury happened in football, so that kind of sets them back a little bit. But Rocky, the style of play that they like to play. I mean, they did lose a lot from last year's state championship team, but I still think that they're going to be very competitive down in that area. But I do think like Thurgood is on the come up. Woodward is obviously going to be really good with McMillan and Kettering Alder, as you mentioned. That's a team to look out for. And I really like Wyoming. It's going to be interesting because they may end up playing 15 football games again. So when are you going to get Prater and that combination with Walker? They're going to be pretty good as well.
Well, forget about getting Prater. I know last year, Coach Edmonds, who has since retired, but he was telling me that he had like 3 guys the first 2 or 3 weeks of practice. Everybody plays football there. Isaiah Walker being really the only basketball player who is a pure basketball player. That's one of the better guys. So, yeah, he's real. That's a really small Division II school, and everybody plays football. So they're going to need that. But when you look at Wyoming, you look at Alter, they play one way, pretty disciplined, methodical, and then Woodward, Thurgood, Aiken, and if Trotwood can get in that mix, if Cincinnati Hughes can, surprise the people, get in that mix, they're going to play really fast. But I think the Division II region in Southwest Ohio is really, really strong again, as it's been for a couple of years, and that's crazy considering, Dunbar isn't even very good right now. On the other side, I did a little research. I didn't come up with anything. Tell me in the Central Division who you think is good in Division II.
I mean, you got the heavy hitter taken out of there in South.
Exactly.
But I do see a little bit of a shift. You got Bishop Watterson, who I think is going to be pretty solid. Columbus DeSales is going to be pretty solid. You got London in there in Division II as well. A team that they may be a year away, but they got bumped up from Division III as Heath. They got 2 really nice sophomores there at Heath. But when you look at Division II, has never been like an extremely strong part of Central Ohio. Outside of Division I, Central Ohio gets a little bit lean because you have so many big suburban schools in Central Ohio, public schools. That makes it a little different dynamics. But I think, a DeSales or a Watterson could be at the top of the list when it comes to Division II. But I don't see a state champion threat in Central Ohio quite like we had last year with South.
There's a bunch of them in Northeast Ohio, and you talked about Akron St. Vincent St. Mary. You talked about Akron Bookdale, who went to the state Final Four last year with Chris Livingston as a freshman, and people always talk about Chris, and he's a great player, but the majority of that team were freshmen and sophomores last year, so they're only going to be much better this year. They're a legitimate state title threat along with St. Vincent St. Mary, and then you've also got Lutheran East. You've got Lake Catholic out of Mentor that's got 2 guys headed Division I. And then you've got your boy Babe Kwasniak in Cleveland, Villa Angela, St. Joe's. I think Division II is tough to call up there. St. V's the favorite, but Division II is tough to call up that way.
Yeah, I think St. Vincent St. Mary's will eventually come out of there when the smoke clears. But I do think, anytime you have a guy like, and Livingston he was fantastic throughout the tournament, but if you remember in the semifinal game, he was in foul trouble most of the game. So it wasn't like a unbelievable showing from him down there last year. He just didn't get enough minutes being in foul trouble. So, Chris has done a lot of things between last March and now, a lot of things that a lot of kids don't get to experience and do. He's played in some big-time events overseas, winning a gold medal, and he's going to be primed to try to get that team back there this year. And boy, that would be some district final between. You can realistically say on paper that those might be the 2 best teams in the state having to play in a district final.
Absolutely. No, that would be high level. And yeah, like you said, Lutheran East is moving up a division. They're also losing some guys from last year. VASJ, same deal. Lake Catholic, I don't know if they have the depth. They've definitely got 2 really good players. And then let's knock on one Northwest team. You mentioned them earlier. Toledo Rogers has a number of guys, junior Jemiah Neal and senior Deshaun Nelson. Maybe not household names in the state, but definitely among the better players. And they're definitely heavy favorites to get out of Division II up there.
Yeah, and if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe they got the other kid from Maumee Valley, Stephen Coleman. He went over there as well. Correct. Yeah, so and then they got the point guard who is a pretty solid player as well. Yeah, I think that they are a pretty sizable favorite up that way. Another team that was in the regional last year up that way that has a really, really good, I want to say junior class is Lima Shawnee. They were in the region last year. I think Columbus South ended up beating them up there at Bowling Green last year, but they should be very good as well. So that's probably your two best bets up that way.
Well, Division II, I think you could easily argue being stronger than Division I in terms of how competitive the matchups will be if when we get to March, we get to the state and even the regional rounds. So good teams there. Division III, I'm just going to hop on a few teams here I think are among the better teams, and you tell me what I'm missing. Cincinnati Taft, on paper, tremendous athleticism, size, and raw talent in that division, along with Mark Mitchell, returning to help out there where he's had a state title, especially in Division III, where Taft's been Division II every other year. Worthington Christian out of Columbus, very, very strong. Harvest Prep out of Columbus, won the state last year. Yeah, they lost some guys, but they still returned their leader. And then Cardinal Stritch out of the Toledo area, same deal, returning from the state Final Four last year and have a legitimate guy in Joey Hollifield.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of the good teams in Division III. Some of the other ones that I would probably put in that group that could be strongly considered would be Anna. I really like their returning backcourt that they have. I think they have almost everybody back except for their horse from last year, a kid that I know you really liked. Ottawa Glandorf will be obviously very good, as they always are. Willard is supposed to be really, really good. Afrocentric, I think, will be good. I think Gamble Montessori is going to be I know they lost Warner, but I think they're still going to be pretty good. I think Bishop Reedy in Central Ohio is going to be pretty tough. They played a lot of close games last year. They were young last year. I think Bluffton's going to be good. National Trail team you saw last year should be pretty good. And a team in Southeast Ohio that should be good. Their best kid was a freshman last year is Proctorville Fairland. So I think those are some of your better, maybe throw in like a Stivers, Warrensville Heights, Deer Park. I think those are some of your D3 teams that should be pretty good.
Absolutely. Stivers had a late coaching change. Dayton tornado effects, unfortunately, still weighing on Coach Felix, and they've got some turmoil there. Hopefully they can get their season off right because they do have some talent there on a really good team, returning guys. Cincinnati Deer Park.
Yeah, there was one. I think this team, I must have just missed them, but I think this team is a legitimate top 10 D3 team. They bumped down from Division II. They have every single guy back from last year, and that's Chillicothe Zane Trace. I think they're going to be really good.
Okay, yeah, there's always some sleeper Division II teams in that area, and maybe they struggle when they get to the state, but this could be the year. But I was saying Cincinnati Deer Park might have a major piece of roster news coming in soon, as they often do. Don't know when that's going to come out, if it's going to happen. And you mentioned somebody else I wanted to talk about. I forget. So Division IV. You're the Division IV guy, Stubbs. You know more than I do. Two teams who I know are really good. Richmond Heights, who was in the state tournament last year, returned most of the guys on that team, plus picked up a big-time transfer in Josiah Harris. And then Convoy Crestview, they lose the older Etzler. He's at Miami, Ohio now, but they still have Kalen Etzler, and they still have a chance to be very, very relevant in Division IV after winning it last year.
Yeah, no doubt. Anytime you got a kid committed to Ohio State as a rising junior playing at Division IV level, they obviously lost a lot of the horses on that team from last year, but they're still going to be very good. You mentioned Richmond Heights. I would put them at one on paper for sure. You look at Berlin Highland, who was in the state championship game last year. They return a lot of guys. The only thing is this year they're going to have to go through Grandview Heights, who bumped down from Division III. This year they're in Division IV. So that would be a potential regional matchup. with Grandview Heights and Berlin Highland, which would be state tournament level. I think Ottoville, if they get some of their pieces back from injury, could be very good. Columbus Grove is going to be very good. Jackson Center is a team that could really, really, they were, I think they were in the regional final last year and got beat by St. Henry in a real tight game. They should be very good this year, as should Toledo Christian should be pretty good as well. So those are some of your D4 teams, and I'd be surprised if we had not mentioned the state champion in the teams that we just listed there.
Well, those are, I think we got hopefully mentioned the state champion in all of the regions. There's going to be some surprise teams, but.
Well, we didn't mention St. Clairsville in D2.
They're in the mix. But we definitely mentioned a lot of the top teams, and now I want to move on real quick to close out on some players. And what I did was I looked at the Mr. Basketball Award, and I looked at 4 guys who I think are favorites for the Mr. Basketball Award, and I looked at 4 guys who I think are sleepers. And when you look at the award, statistics is part of it, and winning is definitely a big part of it. And I looked at the favorites being, in no order, Luke Frazier, senior out of Mentor Lake Catholic, committed to Dayton. Josiah Fulcher, senior guard out of Lima Senior, committed to Bowling Green. John Hughley, senior post out of Cleveland Brush, committed to Pittsburgh. And Von Cameron Davis, senior post out of Columbus Walnut Ridge, committed to Kent State. Those were definitely my favorites. And then my sleepers, guys who I think could win the award, or a couple of these guys might be a year away. CJ Anthony, sleeper, senior point guard out of Columbus Harvest Prep. Malachi Branham, junior kind of superstar out of Akron St. Vincent St. Mary. Kalen Etzler, we just mentioned, out of Convoy Crestview. He's a junior. He's committed to Ohio State. And then in the sophomore class, both Paul McMillan IV out of Cincinnati Woodward and Chris Livingston out of Akron Buchtel, might get in the statistical range and the wins range to be a part of that award. Do you have some more thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that list. I do think what tends to happen when you don't have an extremely strong, I don't want to just discount the senior class, but when I say strong, I mean top end talent, Power 5, type guys.
Luke Kennard, Jared Bollinger.
Yeah, Caleb Webb. You don't have that kind of star power. So I start trickling my way down to look, and Mauro could probably tell you, would probably say this as well. Usually you got to look if a kid is really good and he's either considering or going to Ohio State, he's going to have a really, really good shot at the award. And I don't know if we have that either outside of Etzler, but I think if you want to talk about front runner, because this guy's going to put numbers up, and we know that is attractive. He has the national ranking to back it up. They've taken a sophomore from Akron before. I think that Chris Livingston will win this award.
I could definitely see that. No, I could definitely see that. And now he'll be in the mix. And like I said, there's no senior that's dominant on a dominant team. And there's also no kid who is going to control the voting. When you had a Luke Kennard, you knew he was going to control the voting. When you had Xavier Simpson out of Lima Senior, you knew he was going to control the voting in the region. So, yeah, it's wide open this year. And, you talk about the teams being wide open. I mean, I agree with you. Livingston has a great chance, but there's nobody who I'm like, oh, yeah. Luke Kennard senior year, you knew he was going to win Mr. Basketball. It's kind of irrelevant.
It was already on the paper. I mean, it was.
Issa Ahmad was a great player. Carlton Bragg was a very, very good player. But Luke was winning the award. It is what it is. So yeah, this year that'll be one of the more fun things. And before we wrap up here, the last 5 minutes, I just want to do this. I'm going to run through just a couple other really, really good players in the state, guys who might not be in that Mr. Basketball race but can really play. Class of 2020. Matt Olako, point guard, Hilliard Bradley. Going to Princeton, Grant Huffman, guard, Cleveland St. Edwards. Going to Davidson, Javon Mogmer, Chillicothe, a guy who I almost said was a sleeper for Mr. Basketball, but the team probably won't be quite high profile enough. He's going to Cedarville. Mark Wise, senior guard out of Cincinnati area. Evan Prater going to play football at Cincinnati. He's a Wyoming kid, great player. Trey Robinson out of Hamilton is going to Northern Kentucky. Mo and Jai out of Centerville doesn't know where he's going yet. It's got big Division I offers. And Jackson Ames out of West Claremont. Solid team, not a great team, but a solid team, doesn't get much love. And Jackson's going to Miami, Ohio. Any other senior stubs that I'm missing out here? Central Ohio area, Northeast Ohio area, especially.
I tell you, the one like common denominator is a lot of those players that you mentioned, especially when you're talking Huffman and you're talking Prater and who was the first guy you mentioned on that? Olako. They have a common theme, and they're winners. Those guys have won a ton of games, whether it be with Prater on the football field and the basketball on the basketball court, and then Huffman and Olako have won a ton of basketball games in their 3 years at their respective high schools. So, there is a common theme between a lot of those guys that you listed.
Sure. And junior class, Michi Johnson was at Garfield Heights. He's now at ISA Academy in the Cleveland area, rehabbing from an injury, but we always want to mention him, committed to Ohio State, one of the best players in the state of Ohio when he's healthy. Seth Wilson was at St. V last year on the state runner-up, now at Lorraine, committed to West Virginia already, very, very good guard. We mentioned Nate Johnson from Lakota East, Kobe Johnson from Canton McKinley, one of the better junior guards that probably doesn't get enough buzz statewide. Trey Woodyard, tremendous guard out of London, Ohio. Alex Williams and Logan Duncombe, both out of Cincinnati Moeller, junior front court players. Jalen Billingsley, a high-level talent out of Cleveland Lutheran East. And Tyrese Hughey, one of the best players in the Columbus area, and is going to get a lot more accord this year at Thomas Worthington.
Yeah, those are all really good names. A couple of guys, like a kid that is going to score a lot of points. Kobe Mitchell out of Harrison Central High School, which is kind of a off the beaten path high school, but this kid is really, really going to come to the forefront in the state. I mean, he's got a real chance to average 30 to 35 points a game this year, and he is a very good player, potential Division I talent. Luke Powell, I know we were talking seniors earlier, another kid from Barnesville that is committed to West Liberty, capable of scoring 30 to 35 a night. You mentioned Tyrese Hughey from Thomas Worthington, and we mentioned Jalen Solinger earlier, but man, can that kid get buckets. He's got mid-range game. He's obviously a much more strong and more athletic now than he was early in his career. He can knock down the three. So I think the addition of Hughey is only going to make Solinger more of a threat.
And I like the junior class. And they said Solinger's a guy we didn't mention. I mean, some other just pure Division I talent. Jakata Stone, Cincinnati Aiken, point guard. Anthony McComb, combo guard, two guard out of Dayton Thurgood. Isaiah Walker, wing out of Wyoming and Cincinnati. Jemiah Neal, forward out of now at Toledo Rogers. So yeah, that junior class is very, very talented. As are the younger classes. I'm not going to do the freshmen, but last thing here, sophomores. Sincere Harris was in the Canton area last year. Now at St. Vincent St. Mary's, he will take Seth Wilson's spot. Sean Jones out of Gahanna Lincoln, one of the best players in the state. Bowen Hardman out of Cincinnati Princeton. Might not have a huge scoring year because of the depth of talent at guard. Princeton's got a lot of guys that are going to shoot a lot of balls, but he'll be a good player. He's got major offers. Sean Phillips might be the most talented player in Ohio outside of Chris Livingston or even in the Chris Livingston range. AJ Clayton out of Philo, small town kid near the Columbus area. And Jared Frey, Columbus St. Charles, and Josiah Harris, who is now at Richmond Heights. Like the junior sophomore class has some players.
Oh, man, there are some studs in that class. You mentioned Sean Jones. I was able to see him handful of times last year, and he's one of those guys, when he's playing, you can't take your eyes off of him because of the things that he can do. And it's not just the fact that he's, a sub 6 foot guard, but I mean, he is just absolutely a magician with the ball. The spaces that he can get through is just, it's unbelievable. If you've not seen this kid play, you need to get out and do yourself a favor and watch Sean Jones play. He is really, really good. Bowen Hardman, that is a bad man. And like you said, he is not going to score 25 or 30 points a game just because Princeton's got a lot of guys.
14 points, and he'll probably be their leading scorer.
Yeah, you see him against national level guys, and he stands out. He's not just a good high school player by any means. He is a stud. And then, you got top end guys like Livingston and McMillan, but AJ Clayton, shout out Philo, Corey Tucker, once got beat by those guys at Benedictine in the state semifinals in 1999. Tuck's still trying to find out where Philo is, but I had to do it.
They're in the winners column. I know that for damn sure.
I had to do it to you, Tuck. But yeah, man, I love that sophomore class. I mean, they might not be like as deep, go as far down as the 2021 group, but there are some studs in that 2022 class.
Well, like you said, man, 2020, there's some winners. There's some really tough high school players who we've loved watching over the years, and there's plenty of good players, and we tend to get too high or too low on one class, but when you look at it over a broad spectrum sample size of 7 or 8 classes, they're all about the same with a few exceptions here and there, but junior, sophomore, freshman is, that time of the year to get excited. It's that time of the year to say, who's going to be the guy this year that breaks out on the statewide level. I've certainly got a few guys who I've got my eye on down here, and, we'll see what happens. So, Stubbs, it's 5:54. We got an hour and 6 minutes before the Champions Classic tips off. So you could either enjoy your birthday, or you're going to watch wrestling, or I don't know, you got CrossFit. I don't know what you're doing tonight.
Yeah, I actually fell asleep on Monday Night Raw last night, so I might have to hit the on-demand on that till the Champions Classic comes on. So just another night here at the Stubbs residence.
That's a rough birthday, waking up knowing like, man, I'm too old to stay up for all of Monday Night Raw.
Hey, my little guy goes to bed at about 5:45, and I've been finding myself going to sleep at about 7.
Those high school kids are beating you up during the day, huh?
Oh man, they're killing me.
So, all right, brother. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. We look forward to the Ohio High School Hoops Around the State podcast when that returns. Love listening to it. Would love to come back on if you'll have me. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, man, you guys really rejuvenated I'm ready for high school basketball after this podcast.
There we go. He's got his Pick Central sweatshirt on. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Kurt Stubbs, JJHud, Ohio High School Hoops Around the State podcast. You listen to the Triple Double podcast. For Jason Morrow, I'm Corey Albertson. Thanks for listening. This podcast is brought to you by PlayEasy.com. For players, coaches, or casual athletes looking to book a sports facility, as well as owners and managers of sports facilities, PlayEasy.com is the new one-stop site for streamlined services. If you're looking for a place to practice, play, host your tournament, camp, or other, simply go to PlayEasy.com and create a booking request for your area. Your request will go out to surrounding facilities who will respond with their best offer. Once you receive the offer that best fits your needs, book the facility and you're ready to play. For facility owners and managers, PlayEasy puts the power in your hands to maximize the usage and visibility of your facility. Register your facility for free today at PlayEasy.com. PlayEasy.com is the booking site built by athletes, coaches, and facility managers, and is proud to help bring you the Triple Double podcast. This podcast is also brought to you by Anago Cleaning Systems. Are you tired of struggling in a dead-end job? If so, Anago Cleaning Systems has what you're looking for, an opportunity to go into business for yourself, but not by yourself. With franchising opportunities available for as little as a $2,500 down payment, purchasing an Anago franchise has never been easier. Once you own your Anago franchise, you're licensed to clean commercial facilities all around the greater Cincinnati, Dayton, or Columbus areas with the support of Anago's sales, quality control, operational, and accounting staff. Call 513-332-0033 today for your opportunity to be your own boss and grow your own commercial cleaning company under the guidance of Anago's proven and successful system. Again, call 513-332-0033 to learn more. With Anago, your future starts today.